just learning to stay with myself in those uncomfortable moments. Sometimes people say, like, sit in your discomfort. And I kind of like to expand that to like moving with your discomfort because it can be really hard to just sit still. And people kind of take that literally, like you're supposed to be able to like sit still and like be a Zen master in uncomfortable situations, when often we need to like move our bodies, shake like a dog to release that stress, take a walk. And, staying in uncomfortable situations does not mean staying in toxic jobs or staying in toxic relationships or, staying no matter what and quote unquote working and working on a relationship that's not working. Staying means staying with yourself and dancing with life and the situation to shift things the way they need to shift.
Welcome to How to Trust Yourself, the podcast for anyone who's done with the endless second guessing and ready to tune in to your inner guidance. I'm Anna Holtzman, and I get that feeling of trudging through life like you're wading through mud, trying to figure out which way to go. In my 20s, I spent more time asking what should I do with my life than writing about crushes or bad dates in my journal. I've tried on a lot of answers: architecture, publishing, editing reality TV for a decade, and finally landing on therapy and coaching, helping people like you connect with your purpose. But here's the thing I've learned through all those twists and turns. Trusting yourself is the key to moving forward, even when the path feels messy. So if you're ready to stop doubting yourself and start listening to your gut, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back, dear listener. In today's episode, I'm thrilled to introduce my dear friend and colleague from way back in my TV career, and now my coaching colleague, Janis Vogel. Janis is a powerful pivot coach who helps people heal from toxic relationships and careers, guiding them to rebuild both their personal lives and businesses with confidence. Her work is deeply impactful, not just because of her expertise, but because she's lived through it all herself, healing from childhood trauma, navigating divorce, evolving her career, and learning to trust herself along the way to build an unshakable foundation of self-partnership. With decades of experience in the film industry, working with directors like Ben Stiller, Celine Song, and Spike Lee, Janis knows firsthand what it takes to pivot and reinvent yourself. Now she brings that invaluable experience to her coaching practice, helping others do the same. In our conversation, we dive into the concept of self-trust, exploring the tools and techniques that have helped Janis cultivate courage and confidence in her personal and professional life. She shares insights on money mindset, the courage to make bold pivots, and how taking a leap of faith can lead to life-changing growth. Whether you're just starting your journey towards self-trust or you've been on it for a while, Janis's wisdom is sure to inspire you. So let's dive in. Janis, it is like soul quenching to see you. It's so wonderful to be here with you. I wish it was in physical space, but even being here on Zoom together is really wonderful. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Anna. I can't even believe that we have known each other for decades, and here we are, finally.
Here we are finally. We first met as editors or working in post-production in reality TV, and who I certainly wouldn't have foreseen where my path would go. And then like for us to meet each other on these similar paths is so cool. And so for listeners who haven't known you for all these years necessarily, would you share what you currently do and who you help?
Yes, I am a pivot coach. So I'm a certified transformational life coach. I help people go through seismic shifts in life, namely divorce and breakups. And often that comes hand in hand with career change and money mindset shifts that are necessary to make before taking those giant leaps of faith, or shall we say, leaps of self trust. So, yeah,
Yeah, it's so interesting how, like, you and I are coaches, and I think actually a fair number of listeners may be coaches, but certainly not all of them or even the majority. But when you're a coach, people tell you you've got a niche down and find your niche and, work on something very specific. And that can be really helpful. And I have certainly taken that advice and benefited from it. And whatever it is that we're working on is like one thread in a ball of yarn, and it's part of the system. And it's just an entry point is really what it is. Right.
yeah, for sure. Every aspect of life is so intertwined, and I really work with my clients on rebuilding their life from a holistic standpoint and working from the bottom up and the inside out.
So something that I think you and I can relate to one another about is that it's really like we are our own science experiments, maybe, and it's our own experiences that lead us to the work that we do as it keeps evolving. Um, and I'd love to hear whatever version of that you'd like to share with listeners. What is it that led you to this work?
Yeah, I have experienced both career change and divorce over the last 10 years. But what really led me to this work, like the turning point in my life that opened the doors to all of the work that I have done personally on myself and with my clients, was becoming a parent. And that moment of becoming a mother really changed everything for me. I think, I just want to preface this with saying that there are so many different life experiences that can wake people up to themselves, big shifts, even small shifts, but you know, traumas or grief or becoming a parent or whatever it is can just wake you up to yourself and suddenly everything changes. And I was a high achieving child and adult. Like I was climbing the ladder of the film industry. I just thought that I was going to have a baby and put her in daycare at 3 months and like keep going along my career woman path. And I couldn't have just been more wrong about what a giant change was going to come about in my life. So yeah, I will never forget the moment where I was like trying to figure out how to get my baby to stop crying. And I thought that I was just going to have like motherly instinct and that was all I was going to need to really understand my child. I thought I was like just so intuitive that I was going to understand how to do all of these things. I didn't know that every aspect of raising a child was really a giant learning process. And so I'll never forget the moment where I was like reading this book. My child was on my chest, and I was like reading this book on breastfeeding. And in the book, it said, like, in order for your child to feel regulated, you need to regulate your nervous system first. And your child can feel your nervous system with their nervous system. And I was just like, oh shit, I am going to have to regulate my own nervous system in order for my child to feel regulated. This is going to be some deep work. I just like put the book down and really let that soak in. And it was both like a relief and like feeling like I was at the bottom of a giant mountain, like, oh, I have no idea how to do this. I had always been high functioning and like push through it and prove myself. I mean, even throughout my pregnancy, I was just wanted to like do kickboxing and like skip the prenatal yoga. I was like really, yeah, really, really out of touch with like that, any sort of like soft and gentle approach to life. And so it was just a really, really big change. And so I dove headfirst into childhood development and childhood trauma and my own trauma. I thought that I had gotten away with not really being impacted by the traumas of my childhood, like my
Mm.
father leaving when I was 2 and um, moving when I was 4, and a lot of big life things happening that I thought I was just not impacted by because I was able to like get good grades and get into a good school, and it was all about the achievements and keeping up with my friends, and I didn't understand that like that my life had really um, impacted me in a way where high functioning and being a high achiever was my trauma response. That did not make sense to me until I became a parent and really dove into mental health work. And even though I had had therapy for
Yeah.
decades before, I had done a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy. And it was like, let's start here and go forward and figure out your thinking errors. And it was
Mm.
helpful, but I had no idea to what extent I had childhood trauma to heal from and intergenerational trauma to heal from. And yeah, it was actually, as painful as it was to realize that, it was the most valuable door that opened in my life. And I knew that I had um, such a passion for it, for learning how to parent and learning how to reparent myself, that after 2 years, I decided to become a certified life coach and begin working on this with other people as well.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that piece of your story and sharing it so beautifully. And I just have to say, I love your voice. I always like watch and listen to your videos on Instagram, and I'm just like so happy to be in the presence of Janice's voice, of your voice.
Thank you.
We all have our like unique cadence that we realize or don't realize we're putting out there. But
Mhm.
there's something that strikes me about your story in all of its like uniqueness and details that are so specific to you. A theme that stands out to me, and you could tell me if you relate to the way I'm describing this or not, but like a general pattern that I see in so many of my clients, and I also identify with it myself, as like sort of a period of life, maybe, going from teen years or childhood into like the 20s and 30s or maybe even 40s, um, of just this like go, 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 like achieve, 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 do, 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 do. And for many of us, myself included, also like years of therapy, which for me were certainly very helpful. And looking back, I'm like, well, I needed to do things the way I was doing things then. And it was very much in a like trying to fix myself mode. Um, and then we reach this stage where like something cracks us open, whether it's parenthood, as you're describing, whether it's chronic pain starting to take over our life, as was my kind of like invitation into going deeper into myself, or something entirely different. And then it's like all that go, go, go stops working for us, and it had been working for us, and then it sort of like crashes us in some way, and we like need to find a new relationship with ourselves, a new way of being. And for many, there is this struggle that I know I'm still working on, which is like, how do you let go of something you worked so hard to achieve? And like, I'm just thinking of, because I know you and we share a TV background, like you achieved a place in your career in that field that is very freaking hard to achieve. And it takes a lot of hard work. And just, I mean, it takes so much. And it takes that go, go, go mentality, or at least we, many believe it does, whatever. Like what is that process like of untangling from the go, go, go that has been so important for so long?
Yeah, I like get emotional hearing you just speak to that part of me that worked so hard on my
So
career.
hard. Like it brings tears to my eyes because I just know, like, you're just up against so much in that career.
Yeah, I can sense that we both can viscerally remember um, what we sacrificed to be in those chairs and in those rooms and in those spaces, and how, hard we worked to be there, how lucky we may have felt to be in certain positions. And at the same time, I'm like, oh yeah, if I do that thing where I'm like, I worked so hard to get here, how am I going to let go of this? If those are the two options, that becomes really challenging for me. But when I know that everything I worked for in the film industry created the person that I am now and allows me to give back to people within the industry, people outside of the industry. I I just have this deep faith that everything I went through is lending itself to everything I do from now on. And it was a process to build that faith. And that process was beginning to say no to film jobs was really scary at first. So,
Mhm.
to just explain the trajectory, I had my child in 2018. And in 2020, when the pandemic started, I had a job that I was doing remotely at the start of the pandemic. I had just stopped breastfeeding at that time so that I could go back to work. And instead, I was home.
Mhm.
So there's another like, wow, giving up the breastfeeding to go to work and then not having to have given that up. Like the mess and the tangles of life are just so beautifully complex, and trusting that I'm on a journey and that my child is on her own journey is has really saved me from like the surface level regrets. And I think in 2020, we moved from New York City, where I had lived for 13 years. We moved to Martha's Vineyard, where I grew up, into my parents' backyard, quote unquote. Um, and at that point, I wasn't sure what my career would entail as a film editor. Um, I really thought that that had burnt the bridge by moving out of New York City. But I actually got an opportunity to work on a show called Z-Way when I was living on Martha's Vineyard. And that was the highest achievement of my career at that point. So it was this lesson that okay, I've just moved out of New York City, and now I'm getting this opportunity that I didn't expect. And similarly with coaching, I thought when I announced that I was a certified life coach, I would be once again burning down my film career. And I was saying no to certain film opportunities. And um, I ended up finding that I was getting opportunities that were in line with both the coaching and the filmmaking. And I'm actually finishing a documentary right now about a coach. And so over
Hey.
the years of quote unquote leaving the film industry and becoming a coach, I have gotten more and more aligned film jobs. I've made commercials about painters, so very creative pieces. I was asked to like edit a meditation video, and I'm going to be editing a podcast called Sense of Self upcoming this
Whoa.
spring. So just everything has gotten like very mental health oriented, very spiritual, and I felt like I was taking a huge leap of faith to, be out spiritually, be out as a coach. I'm also queer, and just all the ways that I was like willing to be out was terrifying at first. And each time that I revealed another part of myself and to the world, I was getting more and more aligned opportunities. And of course, there's part of me that still fears that next leap, but there is a huge part of me that has developed that self trust slowly over time. And it's like a trust in myself and a trust in the universe. And I can't even imagine having even talked about trusting the universe before becoming a mother and before like going through all of the healing that I've gone through and the divorce that I ultimately went through. But yeah, it was that developing a relationship with myself that just realigned and restructured life in really, really challenging ways, but ultimately really rewarding ways. I can't, you couldn't, if you had told me that I would be living here in Encinitas, California, in a peaceful home with my 6-year-old child, I would not have believed you. It's been a really long road and a really hard road. And it's really, really peaceful and rewarding at this moment. So,
I'm just resonating off of your words so much. And what comes to mind for me is I think of myself as someone who feels things very intensely. I think you probably do too. Um, Someone who feels things very intensely. And part of that experience for me is that I will feel equally intense fear of revealing myself, letting myself be seen, like in some of the types of ways that I think you're describing. So intense fear of it and equally intense need to express myself, to say the thing that I'm afraid to say, to take the leap of faith that I'm afraid to take, to change careers when I'm feeling pulled that way. Um, and I would just be so curious to hear from you, like, even on a granular level, if you want to go that deep, how you how you navigate that like tension point between the fear and the trust, and like how you move yourself along that into the leap, which sounds like it's a one-time thing, but it's usually much more messy and gradual than that, or how you help clients through it, or both.
yeah, yeah. I really love that sort of fear need ratio, where as the fear rises, the need rises, or as the need rises, the fear rises. And it makes sense because the stakes can feel really high. And yeah, when I was going through my divorce, that was 3 years ago, it was really, really challenging for me to trust that I was making the right decision because I needed to make the decision myself. I historically, as a young person, had polled the entire room on what decision to make. Small decisions, large decisions, like what to wear, what school to go to. Like it was all a matter of just like polling people and then finally coming to a conclusion based on those polls. And um, luckily, my friends and family just respected me so deeply. They were unwilling to tell me what to do. And I had to look into myself to make this choice. And the other thing that comes to mind is that, you know, when we've experienced trauma, one of the common responses is dissociation and not having that sense of knowing what my gut feeling even is. So Luckily, I had already done like 2 years of deep healing work before the end of my marriage, and I really had built this relationship with myself. I remember my therapist saying, "It sounds like you're not showing up for yourself. It sounds like you're not showing up for yourself." And by the third time she said that, I was like, "Okay, just pause. Like, what does showing up for yourself mean?" Like, I did not understand the concept. And she was like, "Oh, so like in a conflict or in a tough moment, in a stressful situation, you can be inside yourself, speaking with yourself, telling yourself that you are here, that you are listening, that you are witnessing yourself, that this is really hard and this is temporary, that you can have this soothing inner voice." And I remember like practicing that for the first time. I can see myself like in the kitchen in a conflict with my ex, like wanting to do my usual thing where I just like am like, wow, look at this trick where I can just completely piece out of my body and like experience the thing without really experiencing the thing. And I remember just being like, wait, this is uncomfortable. I can stay here. This is temporary. You are going to be okay. And really working through this moment and being able to be present for myself and for my spouse in a different way in that time. And just learning to stay with myself in those uncomfortable moments. Sometimes people say, like, sit in your discomfort. And I kind of like to expand that to like moving with your discomfort because it can be really hard to just sit still. And people kind of take that literally, like you're supposed to be able to like sit still and like be a Zen master in uncomfortable situations, when often we need to like move our bodies, like shake like a dog to release that stress, like take a walk. And, staying in uncomfortable situations does not mean staying in toxic jobs or staying in toxic relationships or staying no matter what and quote unquote working on a relationship that's not working. Staying means like staying with yourself and dancing with life and the situation to shift things the way they need to shift in order to change. So, those are some of the things that I both worked on with myself and that I work on with clients. It's so much about moving out of the black and white thinking and doing into the like shades of gray. Um, yeah.
I also like have a certain reaction to that phrase, sit with the discomfort, even though like the meaning that's intended by it, I completely do relate to, but for whatever reason, the wording of it hits me in such a way that um it sounds like it's an invitation to just endure the discomfort. And I'm like, there's something missing there in the wording, for me subjectively. Like it's like, no, talk to yourself through the discomfort, like be there for yourself through the discomfort, sit with yourself through the discomfort.
Yeah, like really envision yourself there with yourself. Envision
Yeah.
the hug you would give yourself, the in some of my hardest moments, honestly, I would like envision myself doing a huddle with three of my best friends.
Oh, yeah.
Um, I would just really envision this huddle, like you got this, and it would just help me so much to have that picture in my mind. But yeah, before learning that I had permission to have this relationship with myself, it was just like me out in the storm. Like I have a moment where I was literally outside my house in a rainstorm, like holding on to a tree, being like, I wish someone would just come and pick me up and take me out of this hellfire. And when I understood that I did not have to be a victim and I could actually be inside my body and move my body to safety and, physically pendulate with traumatic, hard, challenging conversations that needed to happen, take pauses, like yeah, it's another one of the words that is sort of a catchphrase these days, like just pause and take a breath. Well, that feels so impossible for so many of us who have been in like high reactivity or aren't forging that relationship with ourselves yet. It's pausing is really another moment where you can like actually be doing something actively. It's being in there with yourself and validating that you want to escape or run. So much of our nervous system is based on being in prehistoric times and attacked by saber-toothed lions. So just being in there, reminding ourselves that we are safe in this moment, or letting ourselves have permission to move if we are not safe in this moment, that allows us to pause. Yeah.
So you've just done, I think, a really beautiful job of describing some like very concrete tools and techniques that you use that other people listening can use um, for being with yourself, for connecting with yourself. Um, and in the particular scenarios you described, I kind of term those tools like emergency tools, like when we're in the middle of the conflict conversation or that triggering situation, we have our emergency tools to come back to ourselves, to center ourselves. And then I think a lot of times we also have what we might call maintenance tools, like a morning practice or a meditation or journaling. And I'm curious what you might use different terms, but like what emergency tools and what maintenance tools you use these days or that you teach to your clients or both.
Yeah. I love those terms. I love sort of the preventative measures, the daily rituals. And yes, my programs are so much about developing that relationship with yourself, that self-trust developing through knowing yourself, and that both of those things, like self-trust and knowing yourself, aren't these stagnant things, these achievements that you finally reach, that they are a continual evolutionary cyclical process, that they're in constant shifting and changing. And so when it comes to like knowing yourself and knowing what your needs are in any given moment, developing that relationship with yourself so that you can have that dance with yourself. And me personally, I wake up early enough to do a morning meditation before interacting with my child or anyone else. I also really love journaling in the morning or writing a newsletter. And I've experimented with this. So for different people, it will be different times of the day that things benefit you. But those are two tools that I really love. Most of my clients have a writing practice by the time they're through one of my programs. It just sort of happened that way. A lot of my clients end up starting Substacks of their own, and just a lot of my clients like want to put themselves out there and come to me to figure out how they can quote unquote put themselves out there. Like they feel like they want to unveil some authentic version of themselves that's like been desperate to come out for years. And whether that means huge changes in relationships or jobs, either way, there's like something inside that wants to be released and revealed. And writing practices really often help with that. I also love to lead visualizations, really powerful ways to identify people's purpose, people's values, using visualization to get those future goals is really, really helpful. So, In terms of emergency strategies, yes. Speaking to yourself out loud, speaking to yourself silently. I really work with people a lot on their inner voice and practicing that kindness within their inner voice. I work a lot on boundaries that people have, but also like boundaries with oneself. So that's been really, really key to helping people regulate in those really stressful moments, especially in conversations with co-parents where you've been together and now you're co-parenting and the whole dynamic is shifting, and it's so much different than a breakup where you can just cut ties and pretty much not see that person except for on social media. Um, and yeah, just navigating being in someone's life in a totally new way from like one day to the next um, is really, really challenging. But when you have someone to co-regulate with, I had my own coaches when I went through it, and now I coach others who are going through it. And I find that the best emergency tool that I can ever recommend is connecting with a safe human being and having that safe space to return to. I think, especially when we're thinking about self trust in our society, there's such a valuing of like the independent solo mission, the self starter. And the truth is, like, we need human connection in order to co regulate. Just like I learned with my child that if I am calm, she will be calm. It works the same for all of us. Like when we regulate and when we are dysregulated and we connect with somebody who's regulated, we can regulate so much more quickly than all of these, all of this emphasis on like doing it by yourself. And, why can't I just be less stressed out? It's like we need human touch, we need community, we need all of our senses to be surrounded by and stimulated by other safe humans.
Yeah, isn't that interesting how like it could sound confusing to say that developing self-trust is easier in the presence of another person, but not just any person, someone that you feel safe with.
Yeah.
Um, and being around someone you don't feel safe with could be the best way to feel disconnected from self-trust.
Yeah, I think in healing work, one of the most important things to do at the outset when you're first starting is like choosing carefully who is around you. And sometimes this can be a real challenge, especially if you are healing from codependency, or if you've always just had that external anchor of, oh, but I always go to Aunt Sally's for Christmas and I always do these things. And like shifting your identity and shifting who you are willing to be around can be really, really challenging. But it's like that self trust that comes from being able to disappoint others in the name of honoring what you need. That is so key.
Gosh, when you said that, there's like one for me, just kind of iconic story from my own life that immediately springs to mind. And uh, it's funny because my husband, I'm sure, experienced this moment differently than I did. But for me, it was a pivotal moment of like securing safe attachment with him was when I like for the first time just completely lost my temper with him and fully lost control of myself, like had an out of body experience. And like, I don't even remember this, but apparently I was holding a bag that had two kebabs in it, a plastic bag, and I like slapped it against him. Like I was like an act of physical aggression. I'm not saying that's something I hope to ever replicate, but I did it in that moment and ran away. And then he followed after me and stood there with openness to better understand what I was upset about. And it just like cracked me open. It was this like, oh my goodness, I could express anger at someone who loves me and they still love me. It was like, it just changed everything.
Yeah, I have chills. That's so beautiful.
I went back to that moment. I a, a question I'd love to ask you is I'd love to ask you to talk about like one of the things that you're frequently helping clients with, whether it be helping them through divorce, whether it be helping them through the money challenges and career challenges that often surface at that moment. Um, what are some common challenges with self-trust and ways of working through it that are specific to those specific one of those areas?
Yeah, yeah. So what comes to mind is I'm working with two people who are actually business partners on their money mindset, and they are wanting to raise their prices, and they can see that they're both blocking each other from doing that. And I love working on money mindset because there's so much shame around money. And like,
So much.
order to even like approach someone to do that work, you have to acknowledge that you have those issues. And it's so unlikely that someone who is not aware of their money issues, that they're so entrenched. Like the way we speak sometimes about money is like, oh, this is so expensive and this is so out of reach and I just need to save and I just we speak about it like it's that's just the rules, and there's so much subjectivity underneath all of that. And so I love working with these clients on this because every book that I read about finance ends up talking about the need to go into your money history, into the stories that you tell yourself around money, and into those like first money memories that have happened before the age of 7. So, a lot of books around neuroplasticity will talk about like by age 7, you've really wired a lot of your brain, and now they understand that you can keep rewiring your brain with work, but it requires understanding like what those original wires were, what that original programming was. And so I love taking the time to really do that emotional work around money with clients who are in business or clients who are going through divorce. I mean, the amount of money fears that can arise when you are going through a divorce. Not only are you moving from like a two-person household to a one-person household and um, quote unquote wanting to afford a whole different life, you are inherently more stressed in general, which will just trickle down into having those fears. No matter how much money people have, there's often shame around it. You can be ashamed of having too much, you can be ashamed of having too little. And it's amazing because as soon as you bring shame into the light, it just shrinks. And I've seen these clients just like completely shift within one session.
Mm.
And after 2 or 3, it's even better. But they are like creating this container with me to do this work that requires a lot of trust. But they're making these big changes just in one session. One of my clients like said she went home and her boyfriend had booked a ticket for the wrong date and they had to pay to change the date of the ticket. And usually this would have caused a really big conflict, but she was able to work through it with him in a way that allowed them both to make this change and make it joyfully and know that it was, more valuable to them to make the change than not to. And it's just, yeah, really amazing to see what a little bit of awareness around your stories can do to shift you into more abundant thinking around money so that you can make those other changes, so that you can get that divorce, so that you can leave that job. And like, just, it's another area where the black and white thinking coming into some shades of gray around debt, around the possibility of how money can flow into your life is is so powerful.
I'm really excited to get to speak with you in this part of our conversation about money specifically, because I'm pretty sure it's not a topic I've touched on yet. I don't think at all on this podcast. And it's one that touches every single one of our lives. And as you said, it's like, it's so little talked about. There's so much shame around it. Oftentimes we're just even unaware of what our money shame is or that it exists because there's very few safe forums in which to talk about it. So I have a specific question. It's gonna take a little bit of a lead in because I'm gonna make an analogy first. So for the past several years, I had been focusing quite specifically on helping folks recover from chronic pain. And I frequently came up against a misperception that many people have that this like mind body work around chronic pain recovery, which has a lot to do with shifting our beliefs. This misperception is floating around that, oh, this is just about like positive thinking. And you think you're going to tell me I can just think positive and I'll think my pain away. And that's bullshit. And that is bullshit. Like it does not work like that. It's more about it's much more like couples therapy where you're shifting your relationship with yourself and that involves shifting beliefs around the relationship, et cetera. So bringing this into my question, what is a common misperception about money belief work and how would you help people to understand that?
Yeah, it can be really touchy like that. Um, Thank you for sharing that story because it can, when it's misperceived, it can trigger even more shame in terms of like, oh, you just need to like believe you can make more and then you will, or you can just visualize money falling down over you on your bed and you'll have a more of an abundance mindset. And so again, like the scarcity versus abundance mindset is not complex enough to describe the work that I'm doing. And yeah, the work is really subtle. It's really diving deeply into your narratives and into the story and just shedding light on those narratives and understanding that they may be impacting your money mindset now, just looking at those, looking at the way you were spoken to about money, looking at what your parents said or what your family said or what your Uncle Jesse said that one time, like it all has an impact on us. And allowing that impact to be real and true allows us to start untangling that and um, start cultivating better habits or more leaps of faith, right? That it's a shift of your relationship with money to make it less of a fear-based relationship, less of a shame-based relationship, maybe less high achieving, less proving yourself or tying your self-worth to money. These aren't flicks of the switches, or we wouldn't work with other people to make these shifts. Um, it's a process and it requires trusting the process. And I kind of love doing this work because I haven't really met anyone like me doing it. I usually see like the Ramses and people who are a little more like on fire. I'm
Yes.
I'm on fire in my heart, but I have a soothing presence somehow that was my gift in this lifetime, and so I really appreciate bringing a very regulated, calm presence to the world of money and finance. And I actually fell in love with economics in college. And so it's been an interesting path that just sort of came knocking. It was like all of my clients were saying, well, I
Mm.
can't afford this, or I can't do, afford to make this change in my life. And so I felt called to start creating programs around money and finances. And you will have to do the work on like budgeting and investing with other people, but every single finance expert says you need to do the emotional work first. And then they might be like, okay, look at your beliefs and then switch them. Look at your belief and then just write the opposite and make some mantras and let's move on to investing. But when we focus on that piece for the amount of time it actually takes to rewrite a belief and shift a belief, I have a whole process that I go through with clients on really getting down underneath a belief and shedding light on all the aspects of a belief to shift it like multidimensionally, more than three-dimensional shift.
I have to say, I was very happy and fortunate to attend a one-off workshop that you gave on money beliefs and money work. And I totally agree that you are unusual in that space, in that you approach it from an energy that I can connect to, which is like a nervous system informed lens and attunement. And I've read some books and taken things on money mindset and taken things that I've appreciated and felt were helpful from a number of them. But they all the books that I wound up finding anyway, had a little bit more of like a just throw yourself off the cliff type of energy that doesn't really work for me and doesn't tend to work for most of the folks I work with.
Thank you for recognizing that. And yeah, sometimes a path, sometimes you envision a path and sometimes a path just unfolds.
Yeah.
So I'm surrendering to this as a part of my coaching practice, and it's been fascinating to work on it with people.
Janice, I could keep asking you questions for hours and hours, but we're coming in on the close of this particular hour soon. And so I want to ask you my three final questions. The first of which is if there is a soapbox message that you're personally passionate about spreading through all of the wonderful work you do, what would that be at this particular moment in time?
Well, thank you. I could really talk to you forever. And it's been so beautiful to talk to you about self-trust. It's such a big part of my journey and my clients' journey and everyone's journey. So I love that you're focusing on that. And I could not have made any of the changes that I've made in my life if I didn't begin to embrace the mess. And so my soapbox is embrace the mess. Self-trust is not about perfection, it's about weathering the storm. And so many times people think like confidence is about getting it right, that people who are confident know they're going to get it right. When really it's like if you're on one side of the cliff and you want to get to the other side of the cliff, it's not about being sure that you're going to make it. It's about knowing that there's so much down here in the middle that's going to support you if you fall, and cultivating that community, cultivating the resources, cultivating the people who are going to support you if you do fall, And for me, so much support came once I became willing to leap. It was like as soon as I leapt, I managed to get the apartment that I needed at that moment. Like I managed to find the therapist that was going to help me in that moment. You know, it's just the synchronicities that come when you trust yourself and take that leap, knowing that whatever happens, you're going to show up for yourself. It's not about getting to that place. It's just about knowing that you'll be there no matter what.
I love that you're naming that. I love that you're naming that taking the leap doesn't have to mean you're going to stick the landing. It means that taking the leap is going to take you to the next place that you need to be at to get to the next place that you're going to go from there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you were saying embrace the mess, I was getting to experience what I know is an aspect of what your clients get to experience, which was just like these chills and shivers, just gliding down my head and neck of just that experience of the permission of hearing someone else that you feel safe with, letting you know that all the mess, it all belongs.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that because it just reminds me that everyone needs to hear it from someone else, no matter how high you are on the ladder, no matter what kind of executive you are, what kind of leader you are. Like everyone needs to hear it from someone else sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah. No matter how quote unquote enlightened you are,
Yeah,
we
it's
all get
just
to hear it from each other.
empowering. It's so empowering to hear someone say that. And so it was valuable to hear it and now it's valuable to pass it on.
So, for the listeners who may be tuning into this conversation, hearing things that you've shared, whether it's about navigating divorce or money issues, or whether it's really just about that journey of self trust in general, um, and they're hearing things that are sparking for them, they're feeling inspired, but they also may be feeling like, oh, I'm so at the very beginning of this journey and I don't know where to begin and I feel overwhelmed. What words of encouragement would you give to that person?
Yeah. I remember not knowing where to begin and feeling like healing was an impossible mountain to climb with many, many possible paths and which one to take and what to recover from first and what modality to use. And I want to encourage people to just know that it doesn't really matter where you start, just start. Start somewhere, start anywhere, start with a conversation, start with a journal, start with a meditation, and give yourself permission to start. Sometimes starting can seem like a reward, like, oh, I'll hire that coach when I get my shit together, or I'll get a journal when when I deserve it. And like, I just let's flip that on its head. Reward yourself first and see what you do when you feel good. It is such an
Yeah.
incredible message to know that it is our job to feel good and get into an environment where we can actually make decisions from. If you are overwhelmed and in pain and in a dysregulated state or stressed out, like go easy on yourself. You do not need to make a decision right now. You need to do the first thing that will make you feel better, the first thing to get yourself into a safe environment where you can make decisions from. You're not supposed to be functioning from that place.
I just love the way you phrased that so much. And I wrote down, you said, see what you do when you feel good. And I love this phrasing of it. And I often, you know, I explore this stuff with my clients and then I get to explore it with my coach too from the other end of it. It's just an ongoing thing. And I like to say to clients, like, think of this as a scientific exploration. Like, I know this isn't the habit that we've been acclimated to, but it's a scientific exploration. Like, wouldn't it be interesting to see what data you get back if you, like you said, see what you wind up doing when you feel good from a place of feeling good?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not about, waiting till you feel good to start, but it's like do that little thing that will help you feel just a little bit better, not as a reward for anything, but as the beginning itself.
Yeah. Like, what would happen if you're starting from a place of lavishing yourself with love and encouragement?
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if it's something you don't usually do. You
Yeah.
might as well try it when you're at your wit's end, when you're at your rock bottom, like something has to be done differently than it's been done before. And if loving yourself or even just liking yourself a little is something that you are practicing for the first time, like ease into that. You deserve it already.
I feel so fortunate to be sitting here having this conversation with you, getting to listen to you and be in your presence. And for listeners who would like to experience being in your presence some more, whether it's just following you on Instagram or perhaps working with you, um, where can people find you and what sorts of things can they reach out to you for?
Yeah. So I am Janice, spelled like Janis Joplin. Thanks, Mom. JanisVogel.com is my website, and Janis Vogel is my Instagram handle, and I can be found on LinkedIn and Substack, as well as Insight Timer. I invite everyone to experience my guided meditations on Insight Timer. There's actually a new one coming out in the next couple days on self-love. That was my Valentine's gift to the world. And yeah, you can book sessions with me at janisvogel.com. You'll be invited to have a call with me to make sure it's the right fit. And I'm going to be opening up 4 one-on-one session containers for 3 to 6 months this spring. And yeah, more announcements on group programming and communities coming up soon. So thank you so
Wonderful. And I'll
much.
put all those links in the show notes so folks can find them easily. Janis, I love you. I love what you're doing. I love your essence, your you-ness. And it's so good to see you. I hope we get to see each other again soon.
Thank you so much, Anna. It's been such a deep pleasure to have this conversation with someone I have such a beautiful and long history with. Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please do me a favor. Hit that follow button so you don't miss a thing and leave a rating or review. It helps more people find this show, and honestly, it makes my day. And if you're looking for more ways to trust yourself and start listening to that gut instinct of yours, come hang out with me on Instagram at Anna_Holtzman. Let's keep the conversation going. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, trust yourself. You've got this.